For decades, Wall Street titan Bernie Madoff orchestrated the largest Ponzi scheme in history, stealing $65 billion from thousands of investors who trusted him with their life savings. His victims included celebrities, charities, and ordinary retirees who believed the consistent returns he promised, all while not a single dollar was ever actually invested. The elaborate facade finally collapsed during the 2008 financial crisis, but the most disturbing revelation wasn't the scale of the fraud, or even how he pulled it off for so long. What investigators discovered in Madoff's personal notes revealed why he continued the scheme long after he could have walked away, a psychological twist that explains why he may have actually wanted to be caught. In the annals of financial crime, the name Bernie Madoff is synonymous with betrayal on a grand scale. His story is a cautionary tale of unchecked ambition and the devastating consequences of deceit. For decades, he cultivated an image of success and trustworthiness, drawing thousands into his meticulously crafted web of deceit. Madoff was not just a businessman, he was a master illusionist, creating a facade so convincing that even the most seasoned investors were fooled. The world watched in astonishment as the seemingly impenetrable facade of his investment firm crumbled, revealing the largest Ponzi scheme in history, a staggering $65 billion fraud that shattered lives and shook the very foundations of the financial world. The scale of the deception was almost beyond comprehension, leaving a trail of financial ruin in its wake. Madoff's scheme was not a spur-of-the-moment operation. It was a meticulously planned and ruthlessly executed fraud that spanned decades. He built an empire on lies, manipulating financial records and creating false statements to maintain the illusion of profitability. He preyed on the aspirations and trust of individuals, charities, and institutions alike. His victims ranged from wealthy elites to small-time investors, all lured by the promise of steady, reliable returns. The scale of his deception was breathtaking, ensnaring seasoned investors, celebrities, and ordinary people hoping to secure their financial futures. Madoff's charm and reputation made it easy for him to gain the trust of those who should have known better. Behind the opulent offices and air of exclusivity, Madoff was not a financial wizard, but a master manipulator. He created an environment that exuded success and exclusivity, making his clients feel privileged to be part of his inner circle. He understood human psychology, exploiting the greed and desire for easy riches that often cloud judgment. Madoff knew that people wanted to believe in the dream of effortless wealth, and he used that to his advantage. His weapon of choice was not complex financial instruments, but a disarmingly simple tactic: the Ponzi scheme. By paying returns to earlier investors with the capital from new ones, he created the illusion of a successful and profitable business. Through a carefully constructed illusion of consistent returns, Madoff lulled his investors into a false sense of security. They believed their money was growing, unaware that it was merely being shuffled around to maintain the charade. Little did they know that their profits were not the result of astute investment strategies, but the pilfered savings of new recruits to his elaborate scheme. The collapse of Madoff's empire left countless victims in financial despair, a stark reminder of the perils of blind trust and unchecked greed. Bernie Madoff was a master at cultivating an aura of success and trustworthiness. He meticulously built a persona that exuded confidence and reliability, making it easy for people to believe in him. He had all the right credentials: a former chairman of the Nasdaq stock market, a respected philanthropist, and a man who was often seen rubbing shoulders with the elite. Madoff's presence at high society events and business networking gatherings only added to his credibility. He was a familiar face in circles where trust and reputation were paramount. This carefully crafted image was his most powerful tool. It allowed him to project an image of stability and success, which was crucial for gaining the trust of potential investors. He targeted his victims strategically, focusing on affluent communities and leveraging social connections to gain access. By embedding himself in these networks, he could easily identify and approach potential investors. He understood the power of exclusivity, making his investment fund seem like a coveted opportunity reserved for the privileged few. This sense of exclusivity made people feel special and eager to be part of his inner circle. This air of exclusivity only served to further enhance his allure, attracting a steady stream of investors eager to be a part of his seemingly winning formula. The more exclusive it seemed, the more people wanted in. Madoff's Ponzi scheme thrived on the oldest trick in the book: trust. He knew that trust was the foundation of any successful scam, and he exploited it to the fullest. He realized that people were more likely to invest with someone they knew, someone they considered a peer. By positioning himself as a trusted member of their social circle, he made it easier for them to hand over their money. He cultivated close relationships within Jewish communities and social circles, exploiting the trust that existed within these groups. His shared background and connections made him seem even more trustworthy. Word-of-mouth referrals became his most effective marketing tool, as existing investors unwittingly drew in their friends, family, and colleagues. The trust they had in Madoff was transferred to their loved ones. What made Madoff's scheme particularly insidious was its veneer of stability. He promised modest but consistent returns, avoiding the outlandish claims that often characterize financial scams. He promised modest but consistent returns, avoiding the outlandish claims that often characterize financial scams. This approach played perfectly into the hands of investors seeking steady growth and a safe haven for their savings. This approach played perfectly into the hands of investors seeking steady growth and a safe haven for their savings. They were lulled into a false sense of security by the consistency of the returns, oblivious to the dark secret that lay at the heart of Madoff's operation. They were lulled into a false sense of security by the consistency of the returns, oblivious to the dark secret that lay at the heart of Madoff's operation. The illusion of stability and trust was the perfect cover for his fraudulent activities. At its core, Bernie Madoff's operation was a classic Ponzi scheme, a fraudulent investment operation where returns are paid to existing investors from funds contributed by new investors. This type of scheme relies heavily on the continuous influx of new investments to sustain the illusion of profitability. There were no real investments, no stock trades, no magical formula for generating consistent profits. Everything was a mirage, carefully constructed to deceive. It was simply a case of robbing Peter to pay Paul, all the while maintaining a facade of legitimacy. Madoff's operation was a masterclass in deception, where trust was the currency and illusion was the product. Madoff's genius lay in his ability to keep the scheme running for so long. He was a charismatic figure, able to inspire confidence and trust in his investors, many of whom were seasoned professionals. He created an air of impenetrable complexity around his investment strategy, using vague terms like split strike conversion to deter scrutiny. This complexity made it difficult for even the most knowledgeable investors to understand what was really happening. His firm deliberately avoided the limelight, eschewing aggressive marketing tactics and relying instead on word-of-mouth referrals. This approach added an element of exclusivity, making investors feel like they were part of a select group. This air of mystery, coupled with the steady stream of returns, was enough to convince even the most seasoned investors that they had stumbled upon a winning formula. The consistency of the returns, even during market downturns, was particularly convincing. To further solidify the illusion, Madoff generated fabricated account statements showing impressive returns, even during market downturns. These statements were meticulously crafted to appear legitimate and trustworthy. These statements were meticulously crafted to avoid raising suspicion, feeding into the narrative of Madoff's investment prowess. They were designed to look authentic, with all the hallmarks of genuine financial documents. He understood that investors rarely demanded to withdraw their entire investment, content with receiving regular statements that reflected their growing wealth on paper. This allowed him to keep the actual cash outflows to a minimum. This allowed him to operate with a smaller pool of actual cash, using the majority of incoming funds to pay off earlier investors and maintain the illusion of a thriving investment fund. The entire operation was a delicate balancing act, one that Madoff managed with remarkable skill until it all came crashing down. The collapse of Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme sent shockwaves across the globe, leaving a trail of financial devastation in its wake. The human cost of his deceit was immeasurable. Thousands of investors, from retirees to celebrities, saw their life savings wiped out overnight. The impact was particularly devastating for those who had entrusted their entire retirement funds to Madoff, leaving them with no financial cushion in their twilight years. Among the victims were charities and foundations that had relied on Madoff's seemingly stable returns to fund their philanthropic endeavors. The Elie Wiesel Foundation for Humanity, established by the Nobel laureate and Holocaust survivor, lost nearly its entire endowment. Universities, hospitals, and countless other non-profit organizations were forced to curtail their operations, depriving communities of vital services and support. The Madoff scandal was not just a story of financial ruin. It was a story of broken trust, shattered dreams, and lives irrevocably altered. The psychological toll on the victims was immense, leaving many grappling with feelings of betrayal, shame, and anger. Some were forced to sell their homes, postpone retirement plans, or return to work to make ends meet. The ripple effects of Madoff's deceit extended far beyond the individuals and institutions directly affected, eroding public trust in the financial system and casting a long shadow over the world of investing.